Hello world! Patricia O'Connor and Frida Reba Dorsey here today. On the bonsai balcony, we are going to take advantage of this beautiful day today. And we're gonna also take advantage of these beautiful Taxodium ditchum, my bald cypress, and we're gonna do a bald cypress show, y'all. The colors of fall are finally starting to show up on my bald cypress trees, and they are looking some kind of spectacular. Oh, first things first. My partner in crime here, Frida Reba Dorsey, taking care of. I don't think you're stepping into frame there, sweetheart, but that's okay. I appreciate you. That's my wiener dog, Frida. I've got more dog treats, milk-bone dog treats standing by, and I have my coffee standing by. This is not going to be that long of a show. I've been enjoying this day today. It's my day off. It's Saturday. So on days like today, instead of taking my big watering can with the big shower head on the end of it and slinging water, according to my neighbors, slinging water everywhere, I take this can, and this can, meaning this water can here, it's already, and I'm able to just kind of slowly go through and water everybody. And I have to say, watering goes from that chore that has to be done from one of the most pleasurable things I do, just walking around, just hand watering all of these trees slowly and methodically, and then going and filling this up in the shower again, and then walking back. It is just absolutely, it can take whatever frame of mind you're in, whatever it is, it returns you to this watering place, which is very, very peaceful for me. I love that part of my day, and the earlier that I do that, sometimes it's better for the trees, and sometimes I'll look at them on my days off, and those are the days where a lot of times it's a compromise. You know, I'll run out here in the morning before I'm about to start my way to work 4 out of 7 days, and I'll look and I go, is this going to be in peril if I don't water between now and the time I get home tonight in the dark? And if it needs water, we water. If it doesn't need water, but it looks like it probably will in a little while, we water. Because if I get thrown a curve and the temperatures go up higher than I think, then that situation compounded could be fatal. So those other 3 days a week allow for me to let the trees go a little longer if they need to, get a little greener if they need to, get a little drier in between waterings if they need to, while at the same time my zen is in watering. So I'm kind of like going, yeah, let's are you ready yet? Kind of a thing. And so that's what's kind of going on there. That's what's kind of been going on with my day. We have also been under a slight deluge, maybe not as much as what some of the atmospheric rivers we've had, but it's been raining somewhere within 30 miles of here for over a week, and it's been cloudy and cold and breezy and high winds too. Some high winds, 15s and 20s up here. But at the same time, I have trees that I worried about being overwatered, so I was about where camera is sitting now is where my ponderosa pine sat for 3 of those rainy days, so that it could dry out the way it's supposed to, and then right back out there just in time to get some more good old rainwater. So that's kind of how I've been dancing here. And one other little thing of past business. Brandon Christie. It arrived. The good news is it arrived. Brandon Christie of Anaheim, California. The good news is the ponderosa seeds you sent me, that was so sweet of you. I didn't know they were on the way. I didn't get a notice from the fine folks at FedEx ever. I never got a notice that it was en route or here. I got a notice from the apartment saying, hey, you know you've had a package in our mailroom for 2 weeks. They did not survive. What I found was a Ziploc baggie with a moldy wet paper towel that said Pondo, Yosemite. Oh, yeah. Also, the good news was those seeds were definitely viable when they were sent. It was the first time I'd ever actually seen ponderosa seeds. They were huge compared to my black pine seeds. And I would have wanted to ask, do I put these in the fridge? Apparently not. They all sprouted yeah, they had all sent roots in the dark in that envelope, in that Ziploc baggie. And what I got was a moldy Ziploc rotted little napkin with some dead ponderosa seeds in it. But they had definitely, and even then, I put them in cups, threw water to them, and said if there's any DNA in there that hadn't quite given up the ghost, here's the stuff. But yeah, I really appreciate what you did, and those seeds would have been fantastic. That would have answered my, do you have to stratify these? No, you can even put them in a wet paper towel and put them in FedEx, and they'll sprout just fine. So yeah, that was, it made it. And if you were wondering, I wonder whatever happened to that thing I sent Patricia, that was so sweet of you. Thank you so much. I absolutely appreciate it. Old Cypress show. According to my computer, I didn't really even remember this part. August 2020, my birthday is August the 20th. August of 2020, the 20th, I had photos on my computer where I had these 3 trees in the containers they came in. Or, you know, I had collected all of the pieces for this compilation being my ball cypress, Texodium ditchum. And I had all the pieces in place to build this compilation in August of 2020. And these 2 outside trees were all in 1 gallon. Yeah, their roots were ready to go into bonsai pots, but also they had these chops. That chop was going to require a lot of growth, a lot of rollover. We had a lot of tape work to make. And if you're doing a ball cypress and you start off, how do I start off with a ball cypress? Well, if you get one that's got a good fat base, that's really cool. That's a, you know, if you're going to collect one or something and do it correctly, you know, there are ways that I can buy this tree for $100 by bonsai people, and most of the time it will come already with this chop in it, or you're going to pay that extra gazillion bucks for the shipping on a liter way up there that you don't need. But having said that, whenever you get one of these, and the good thing to do is look at your base. You know, these guys are all about the Nabari. They've got the Nabari to die for. They've got the base that's this fluted buttress bases that are just, you know, and their cousins, the Dawn Redwood, do not do that. It seems to be an aquatic adaptability that helps them. And these guys can live in standing water, and quite often do. Where you see these guys thriving the most tends to be like if there's a place that's partially flooded during the rainy season, but then maybe dries out during part of the season too. That's going to be the kind of place where and it doesn't freeze a lot. That's going to be the kind of place where you're going to see a grove of ball cypress just living their very best life. Also, my bald cypresses are rarely completely bald because I find Patricia hair hanging all over them. It's like they're kind of grabby in their way, that they just want attention, but at the same time they get all of the attention with these colors. In the summer they make this beautiful foliage, and to be where I am on a really hot day is to still, even with these little trees, is to experience the oasis. There's always, the air is always a little cooler and a little sweeter right here in this little spot that I'm in right now. and that's what and the whole time I've been going is also at 5 years. I'm in the Bay Area of California, and our temperatures are very mild here all year. And these guys are some real sun babies. They can take, this is where I'm walking through. They can take high temperatures. They can, they're not as happy at 90 degrees, but if they're standing in water and stuff, in their natural environment, that's something that happens a lot. And in places where that happens, they're not so bulletproof on a 100-degree day that they're growing a lot. They're probably stagnant on a triple-digit day. But on those 80 and 90-degree days, they're probably growing faster than anybody else. And that's just they're somewhat heat tolerant. They're not water tolerant. You want to keep these guys watered. In a lot of ways, they're easy to grow. I could do a deep dive on bald cypress and probably catch up to what's known at some point. I don't, in a way that I don't know that I could do with Japanese black pines. I have been playing with Japanese black pines as long as I've been playing with these, and the feeling that I have is, now aficionados are just going to just climb all over me for this, but the feeling that I have is that I learned enough in the first probably couple of years that I grew these to take them on to finished trees. And when it comes to Japanese black pines, I've been learning about these trees at the same level for these same 5 years, and I don't feel like I've actually scratched the surface. So that to me is more of a personal challenge. Whereas these guys, I'm sort of already, I wouldn't say in set it and forget it mode, because we have our chores to do on these trees. But if I were a person who really loved bonsai, but at the same time my day job wouldn't allow me to be the next Ryan Neal or something, then maybe I might look at something that is a little bit lower maintenance at times, like a taxodium ditch and bald cypress. If you can keep this tree watered, you can have it. I don't mean I'm giving away my tree, but I'm saying if you want a bald cypress, and if you can keep it watered, if you can keep that part of your commitment just to keep this guy watered, and by that I mean every day, winter, summer, leaves, no leaves, keep it watered. If you don't have time to keep it watered, sit in a pan of water. And a lot of people do that, but I've had a lot of other people point out that that may not be over the long haul sustainable. And what they say is, where are all they've been seeing people keep their trees in vats of water, like this, to see if they can get them to grow cypress knees, and some of them do and some don't, or to get other effects. And as one instructor pointed out, people have been doing that in America with bonsai trees, making bonsai trees out of bald cypress for over 50 years. Where are all those old trees? So and there are a few really cool bonsai trees sprinkled around the United States, and some of them embrace the few that I know of tend to embrace two styles. Formal upright, which is kind of what these are looking like right now, or flat top. And flat top is a tree that is grown up. Typically, I hear this explanation, and I grew up in the part of the United States where we frequently had to deal with hurricanes on the Texas Gulf Coast. So a storm comes, rips the top off the tree, but then you've still got this base that's alive, and underneath the ground there are all those roots with all of that stored energy that was a product of that canopy. So it can, not only will that not kill it, but it'll be like the hurricane pruned a whole forest of cypress trees, and you'll see all these topless cypress trees with twisters or stuff that are on the outskirts of hurricanes perhaps come and just take all the tops off the trees. Pines and cypresses. Well, the pines, when they twist their top, you'll see those tops fall through people's houses. And actually seen it in a bedroom with a tree trunk broke in half coming through right over somebody's bed, and it was a couple of feet across. It was a major chunk of wood. That happened, and that would be an example of a dead pine tree, probably. Not so with these. They will then send out a whole bunch of what would be the next top branches, and they'll all go straight up. And then it'll pick one of those to be the dominant leader, and at that point it goes straight up and maybe starts leaning over, you know, like a pole that's just gotten up. Or maybe that top sprout, it goes up and does one of those. And so you end up with something that doesn't have a whole lot of branches, some down low, long, slender top, and then this flat top at the top, which was a regrowth from storms of time past, right? It's recovered from its hurricane exposure and stuff, and you've still got that massive base, and you've got a top that's fluted and grown into style, and then you've got this real elegant, simple top. And that's an American style of bonsai that kind of goes against the grain of the formal, upright, kokufu, planned kokufu, meaning a major show in Japan, which is kind of like what they say goes in the world of bonsai. If we're playing by Japanese standards. So these guys, I decided early on that I would probably make this trio of trees 3 formal uprights in a grouping. Usually trees of this size stand on their own as far as just having, you know, a display piece, because they're pretty impressive. Also, if I were in a hotter environment than our very, very temperate Bay Area, these guys may have progressed farther, but our 60s and 70s have been a bit of a compromise to these guys. They would probably prefer more 70s and 80s up to 90s. Actually, these guys are acclimated to taking a cool 90 degrees, kind of freaks them out. But that's not typical for bald cypress. Most of them are kind of hitting the sweet spot. But as trees that I've had for 5 years, we're starting to bring this. You can see that I'm still not done, right? And I see my counterparts in the UK who are growing bald cypress, and I'm going, their climates are going to be less heat driven probably for most of the year, kind of like mine is, and they're probably going to see a similar growth rate. And whereas the boys in the South can do one of these chops, and then maybe 4 years later they've shifted gears and they're starting to work on refinement, we've been at this 5 years and we're not quite there yet. I think my original time frame was probably more in scale with what I had learned, and what I had learned was based on what I had seen other people do in more coastal regions. And my experience with them as a kid growing up. That was back there where those temperatures were quite a bit warmer. So at 5 years, I think we're doing pretty good. I think this could have gone a little faster if we were in a hotter temperature, but I wouldn't trade my climate for faster growing bald cypress trees. This year, I rotated the trees around, and I noticed something that I hadn't seen before. This past year, I did some cleanup on all these chops. I think the longer these chops are, the more elegant they are. And I think for in the 5 years since these were originally done, I probably would have done better to elongate this line. Seemingly at the time, I'm thinking, that's making a longer scar. Yeah, and this is making a blunter scar, and that's making a longer scar that would have been narrower. So when it's that abrupt, it has farther to do, and that taper is going to come out fine. But that would have been another way to do it, and I might have sped things up. And I've also seen people take their chainsaw and go every couple of years and go right in here and carve out the middle. Now, there's another rule of thumb that I've just seen. I've just seen some other growers who who are pretty on their game. I don't know that they're like bald cypress specialists, but they're definitely some of my teachers, and they were advocating this space right in here to allow for the rollover to create this shape. I've been thinking I want to take this out. I don't necessarily want that shape. I want the rollover to kind of it'll anyway. Those are kind of competing ideas, that you hollow out this dead wood in here and allow the rollover, that you don't make it cross over all this wood. Their thinking is that I'm going to have a dimple here. My thinking is I don't want to have to cross over this mountain to close up this zipper. And I think the tree would, if I had a little bit of a dimple there, I don't think that would take long for it to smooth out or whatever and be a feature in the tree, and it wouldn't be the same as reverse taper or anything necessarily. So I don't know. That's just different ideas on how to go about that. The rule of, when I first got my bald cypress trees, I enjoyed the silhouette that these guys make. You know, there's a trick that we all learn in bonsai early, to where if you have a chop, you put some foliage over the front of your chop. You just, you know, almost like the idea of a comb over, right? And then you don't see that cut and you don't see that healing part, but you see the trunk again, where you've exposed the trunk. You're the one who decides where other people's eye get to pick up the trunk. And if done correctly, I could have had these guys look like almost mature trees, because you wouldn't see the chop part because of the elegant foliage, right? But to do that is also to expect the trees to develop into the trees you want them to be, while at the same time trying to present them as what you want them to be in the future. So you're expecting them to grow and develop in this way that you want, while at the same time you're cutting them back to that vision, so that others will see that vision early. And you do that at your expense, and you do that at time's expense, and you do that at the tree's expense, especially its energy allocation. So the first couple of years that I had this tree, I thought that it was kind of amazing that I could use my decorative eye to shape a tree the way I wanted it. Even if it wasn't a fully mature tree, I could get that look out of it and back off and go, yeah, that's cool. And what I didn't really realize I was doing is I'm adding time to the time that it will take the tree to develop. And I was also cutting off things that had a lot of stored energy that the tree had just got through making, and probably hadn't had time to transfer to the roots yet, before Pat comes along and goes, I think it would look better without this, voila. And it did, it looked great. And this isn't the story of how I wrecked it. This is the story of also how I did wreck it on redwood. That kind of expecting a tree to develop while at the same time cutting it back to your aesthetic design idea don't always go hand in hand, especially when it's happening to somebody who's got a lot to learn about fertilizer, which I did. So in lieu of that, what I now do is I allow these trees, which are in development, to grow out as much as they want. A lot of times the things that we learn early on that we don't want, you know, over 2 branches coming out of one spot. We don't want, you know, the rule of 3s, right? We don't want bar branches. We don't want whirlwinds. We don't want up, straight, back. A lot of times we can let that go. We can let that go because A, it's not in show time. 2, we're not going to let it go long enough. It's not going into a show. B, we're developing the tree, and the foliage that it makes helps the tree to develop as quickly as possible. If we cut things off for aesthetics or just for aesthetics, we're cutting its energy off. We're running the tree into the ground, while at the same time making the end goal farther out there. So what I would say to people that aren't in just like on the equator or in places where these trees just thrive and grow super fast. I mean, in a good front yard in Florida where this thing would get all of a sudden, you would see maybe a couple of feet of growth a year. Not in this way, but just, just hauling butt straight up, making this long fishing pole up here, which sometimes arcs over at the top just because it's, and that's another flat top look. Sometimes the flat top look is created by the top two branches sticking out of it straight up, and sometimes it just grows so straight up that at the last 15 feet it kind of does this like a sickle. It just kind of arcs over. 10 years later, that's a flat top. So you see both styles. Anyway, the other thing is I wait until all of the foliage, like right now we're starting to see some really pretty colors. And people have places that they drive to go watch fall colors. You want to go see the maples somewhere. You drive up to New York to see whatever all of this stuff is, and it's beautiful to look at. I don't think anything holds a candle to these guys in a good fall. The colors that I see are some really beautiful, and there's a bunch of different things that these guys do. Every year it's a pleasure, and it's a slight different take. Some years it just absolutely slaps you back with a deep red. That happened while you were sleeping one night. You'll just come in here one morning and look out at your trees, and they'll just be all three, top to tail, deepest color red. And some years we get this mixture of red and yellow and still some pretty vibrant green and other shades of green. And that's also as beautiful and it is as enjoyable in some ways, but then there are those other years where the sugars and the temperatures all kind of collide to some kind of spectacular thing. I wouldn't trade that for anything, and I don't think there's a maple out there that can hold a candle to these guys when they're having a good season for color. So I'll wait until these guys are going to do all they're going to do color-wise. And then if at some point, it's not a matter of defoliating. It's not the same. These guys will take their branches and they will become finally dead on the vine. And if you touch them, they'll go tink and come off. If the wind blows, they'll do. But here on the balcony, they get sort of protected, and there's always going to be a bunch of foliage on here that's dead on the vine and looks ratty. At some point, that was beautiful reaches a state of decay where it's not really adding much to the picture anymore. And it's super simple to defoliate a whole branch. It's as simple as putting your thumb here and going zip, and just all of that stuff is just immediately gone. And having done that, it's easy and it cleans up the tree, and at the same time, that's all you're going to see now. It's well and true. That's my mind goes, okay, welcome to winter, because that's all we're going to see now until spring. And at early spring, we'll start to see goosebumps on the trees. Ball cypress don't really have the same type of bud sites. They have all types of bud sites. Like what you would see on an oak, you go, that's a bud site. But then also the whole tree has what looks like goosebumps on it. Any one and every one of those is a potential bud site. And these trees have gone into trauma before and just went, whoa, was just like, wow, what happened to you? That's just, I can't see that there's a tree in there. It's a little furry cypress, because they all just went at once for some survival tactic. I've seen pictures of that. I've never seen one of mine or any of my friends do that, nor have I actually seen one in the wild. But I have seen photos of people's freaked out ball cypress trees. These guys are very hardy. If you trim them back every year, like I was doing that first year, to some aesthetic design so that you can show them off, you can rob the energy out of them. I would guess that people have done that with these. I did this to my Dawn Redwood. That's what I'm saying. It's a close cousin, and about the same time, I treated it a little bit. I was using it as the guinea pig, and I found out early what happens when you rob the energy out of a seemingly healthy tree by pruning it back too much. And I've been paying for that this whole 5 years, but I didn't lose the Dawn Redwood, so. we'll continue to fight and play that game. But these guys have been rewarding. I haven't really done anything to knock back the growth. One thing I also did is I went all out on the substrate for these guys, knowing that we had a lot of lumber to build, and I was just going to do everything I could to facilitate the roots. And what I did is I filled this enormous tub with some really good choice akadama. That was the wrong move. That would have been the right move for a finished tree. We're going on now 5 years and we still are not finished trees. Those roots do not need fine akadama. They needed big chunky particles, probably about the same as my larger pine, so that they could make big chunky roots, which would make big chunky tree parts. Fine akadama helps you to make fine refined branches, which is not what we're doing at this stage of the game on this type of tree right now. So this could have been, I probably slowed this down a little by thinking that I was doing something extra when actually I wasn't. That's just kind of the way. That's just kind of, so at the same time, they love that. They love the fine akadama. And these trees just do so well. I feed them year round. Even when they do not have any foliage on them, I still see the trees heaving up. I still see them in fall is when I see some of the most growth, and then in winter, just before spring, I see the trees starting to swell up a lot, and these buttresses will get fatter and start to split. I'll start to see the coating here split, and we'll lose veins of it. One thing that happened to these guys, we did some prune back here last spring, and I sanded back the leading edge on all of the edges of this rollover, and that helps to keep that rollover active. On this one, I broke the line. It was a continuous rollover that followed all the way down here, and I broke that line. And what did that do? I forgot a lesson. I forgot a lesson that I heard years ago. Somebody was telling me, or in a lesson that they weren't telling me personally. But let's just look at it this way. If we were to look down at the tree and the trunk is round, and we're going to look straight down. Let's take that circle that's the cypress tree trunk, and let's divide that up into 4 pie shapes. Boom, 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 boom. If we have branches and all 4 of those pie shapes, then that's life running through the vascular system of that tree. These are not like my pines. If these are the lines carrying nutrients to the vascular system, and these are the branches that are connected to those, kill this, kill that. Kill this, kill that. They don't move stuff in all directions. It's just, they just move it up. They're just moving it up or back down. When it comes to my pines, if you do something to this vein of that where nutrients were going, and there's stuff up here that was dependent on it, this guy will just transfer its nutrients over to here or here, and it'll just go around, whatever. Not so with these guys. So when I cut this line, when I had a circular line that was closing up, and I broke that line here with my sander, shaping this what I thought it would be. Instead of growing that, remaking that line back to here, it went down. It just, the scar is now rolling over. The rollover is now right here, rolling down. See, I don't have any branches right here. I don't have any. This branch and these over here on the back, or the border here, and that comes right on up to here. So in other words, when I broke this line, it decided where it was going to connect. reconnect this. It decided where it was going to reconnect this circle, and it didn't do it here. The first branch that comes out of this area, see, this is my rollover. This is my rollover. The first branch that comes out of there is this guy. This. What some people have referred to as suckers. I kind of like them. I think it's not what looks like one, and you can't see a lot of the base, is actually a cluster. And I want to cut this back to one. And when all the leaves die back, I will decide, I think, which one of these to keep. And at least for now, this will be a part of, we will get our diamond shape encompassing the 3 trees. And this will be, I think, the way it stands now, I like the idea of using this piece to bring up this end, to close up that diamond. It could also be a branch coming out of here, going this way to do that. But I like this little sister down here. If it weren't for this, I think this vein would have died all the way down to the roots. As it stands, these 2 rollovers drop all the way down to here. That was like a ball getting dropped from the roof. All the way, this little tree right here went, boop, I got you. I'll be the living vein. So this is the part that closed this circle, and I did that when I broke this line of rollover. I had a line of rollover right here, and when I broke that line of rollover, that's what sent the rollover. Had there been a branch here or here, it would have done that. But there wasn't. There was a branch here, which I don't know if the camera picks that up, but there weren't any branches right in that center spot where you see this discoloration. What am I going to do about that? The first thing I'm not going to do about that is, one, it had already was well rolling over before I even picked up on what had happened. I didn't see this because I'm never standing. This was only recently rotated. And I'd have to be standing kind of over here in the corner. A little inconvenient to even notice that. I'll just be super astute, and I didn't get it. But when I rotated the tree, that was the first time I noticed that. So it was already well rolling over before I even noticed. But had I been younger to bonsai and saw that and went, oh my God, I killed the vein. I did. I killed the vein. Not on the whole, not to the base, but to down here, which is, but to the nabari, close enough. Now, so what I'm going to do about that is nothing. It's a space this big that needs to roll over, and once that's happened, that'll do again what the rest of the tree is capable of, which is putting out branches through thick bark. Bald cypresses can put out branches in thick bark, like it's not even there, And then that starts a tug of war. It will split. Let's see. It'll split bark and put out a shoot. And then once that happens, that shoot, if it gets light on it, will start to fatten up. And at the same time, that split will go, hey, I'm a split, and it'll try to heal. So you will see wrinkles develop right here and here where that split is starting to roll over and starting to put tension, trying to draw that curtain back up. Meanwhile, that limb, that sprout that pokes through the bark is going, no, I'm getting sunshine. I'm gonna unfold into this, and then that's getting more sunshine, so it's gonna go bam, 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 bam. Now we've got a whole limb and a pad there, and this thing is getting fatter and fatter. Meanwhile, that split is still trying to close, and at some point, the split wins. In the tree, you'll hear, if you were there, you would hear a pop, and you can just see a limb. They don't fall and hang down and tear off like heavy, slow, snow laden limbs, or limbs that are overly blown, but it might be during a windy day. But that tension of that closing is compounded by the tension of the expansion, and there will come a day where that limb will snap like a carrot, pop, and you can see it, they fall straight down. In other words, they don't break, and that last little tendon underneath here that was spared the compression hangs on, and then it kind of strips off the bark. No, they just go pop and fall straight down. And that, when you go underneath cypress trees, you'll see these 10, 15 feet long fishing poles or walking sticks or anything else just as straight as they can possibly be, and you look on the end and they almost look suspiciously cut. That's the way they snapped off, just the same way that if you snap a carrot, it almost looks like it's been cut, but it snapped off. That's what these trees tend to do. They're prolific about putting out limbs. And what I have come to do, I think what works for me, what I've decided, and at this stage of the game, I can still change my mind. If this tree were going to be a semi-cascade, too late. We're years and years and years away from any one of these three slightly resembling a semi-cascade or a cascade, or we're a change of angle away from being an informal upright and then growing totally new foliage or something. But as far as a formal upright, which is the way I decided to go with these trees personally, the more kokofu aesthetic design, or if I were to go with a flat top, American flat top design, both of those would have these pre-bonsai looking pretty much the same as they do now. I could tell you that these guys are going to be my future 3 flat top trees, and at this stage of development, I still wouldn't have chopped the branches down that sparse, because I need them to help me to develop the tree, and the shape of the trunks, and the shape of the leaders going up, and their taper. That would all be a part of the same mechanism. So I was just watching somebody on a website that was derived for bald cypresses, going, I would like styling ideas, and they had a beautiful bald cypress with some extremely gorgeous taper. I mean, it was really fluted base, and my idea, and it was early in development, and it was in a cement mixer, which is kind of what you see these guys planting them in early in development. All right, all great. And they were wondering about styling ideas, and I'm like, man, you've got a really, really, really fantastic potential tree there. Make that chop, make that angled chop, pick a limb, wire it and send it straight up, and start developing some taper. That'll be the parts where, if you're in Louisiana or in Mississippi or in Texas, in certain parts of Texas, or you're in Houston area or other areas where bald cypresses just absolutely thrive and stuff, then you won't have a lifelong endeavor to turn this into a taper of a tree. But get started on that early. And then I look at my counterparts in the UK, and I'm sitting there going, they're decorating these trees, and they haven't really started addressing that taper yet. And I know that as a kid from the South, I thought I was going to do this top chop and be done in 2 years, and we've been doing this since 2020, and it's now almost wrapping up 2025. So a little, and I'm still not. They get great. I mean, these trunks are starting to look fantastic. Everybody's doing their job. It's taken a couple of years longer than I thought it would take, and I've learned since then that it's probably my temperatures. They're happy here, they're fine here, but they don't actually get hurricanes, and they don't actually get tornadoes much, and they also don't see triple digit, but then they don't see as many 80-degree days as their faster growing counterparts, and they're the same species. It's just my counterparts, I mean, in a warmer climate. These guys would go faster if they were in a hotter climate. They grow at about the same speed that they would grow if they were in Seattle or something. Fine. When you have a finished tree, you'll be able to maintain it. It's a little bit slower moving and a little bit cooler atmosphere. You can probably maintain that sweet spot that much longer. But at the same time, it's going to take a little longer to develop. I'm glad I didn't freak out and start carving all of this. I go, oh, it's a dead vine, and maybe just use that. I've got chainsaws and routers, for God's sakes. I could go all freaky deaky on this, but it doesn't really change the plan any at all. It's just like at the end, it ended up being more like a casual observation. With a plus, I'll still be able to see that there was. I have here and over in here some fluted base on this tree, and as it stands now, this leader, since it has a line going all the way down to here, this rollover is all the way down to here, and it's fat and it's busting through the bark. It's going to make these buttresses, and it's more apparent on the backside closer to me. That rollover is about fat, and it's just fluting out the base, and at the same time falling. It's adding to the show without me doing anything. And it was already starting to do that, and well on its way to taking care of this on its own before I even noticed. The flip side of that is I'm not going to expect anything growing here this year. This is the inner part of the trunk. This zipper is going to have to pull up and close before I see anything sprouting. But I've got stuff here. I've got stuff just on the other side of it. I had stuff growing right here, right? So my outer perimeters are such to where that line doesn't really hurt me, and it does get picked up. It does get picked up right here. With all of these colors that it's showing, it's a great time to let the trees just zap up, start showing me these beautiful colors, while at the same time we're still photosynthesizing. No rush to do anything. Let it roll. In a little while, when all of the colors are finally well and truly gone, I can just go through and go zip, and in about 4 minutes, no joke, I'll have all 3 trees bare. Just zip, 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 zip. Then that is a great time to get your printers, step back, and look at the 3 trees. You could say, this was a good branch, well placed, we'll keep it. These 3 were not. Clip, clip, clip. This branch is a nice counter to this branch, we'll keep it. The one just above it, the one just below it are out of place. Clip, clip. I cut the tree back down to what I consider to be possibles, knowing full well that come spring, whether I did that or not, the tree was going to, even in a mature state, every spring, the tree says it's spring by putting out a flush of shoots all over. You'll never be bored with a bald cypress. You will always have shoots to prune or pluck or pinch or whatever you're into. It's at that point that if I wanted to maintain the look of my tree, then I might go through but we're not. That still sucks the energy out of the tree, because we're still expecting the tree to run for us. It needs to run, it needs to build, mass, and that's a workout. And in order to do that, we need to feed it, we need to water it, we need to let it photosynthesize, we need to let it back bud. If the back bud is 3 in one place, you know what? I don't even know that I'm going to keep the branch. Go ahead, make 3s, make 4s. It's not going to cause reverse taper on my trunk this summer, unless I'm just sitting there and let it. If I do that, maybe then I go through and I cut my 3s or 4s back to 2 or 3s. Even then, I'm not going to cut them back to 1 as a design aesthetic. That's all energy that the tree is making, that it needs to do the things that we want it to do. Let it. Let it run. Don't try to make some kind of aesthetically pleasing, I want to look at this beautiful all summer. That comes at both of your expense. Just let it run, let it put out all the branches that it's going to, let it back bud all it's going to, feed the tree, water the tree, guide the development of the trunk and the roots. You'll get the root base that you want when you have all of those branches and you're letting them photosynthesize and you're letting all that energy it makes travel down in the base. Things start getting fat and happy. That's what we're working on. You can accumulate that quickly in a place that's a little warmer than we have, but we're still making good use of this. And with feeding and constant watering, that's how you can build just the basics, the three basics, kind of like, and you can just hit the ground running with a bald cypress. I would recommend this tree to a beginner who wants to learn about bonsai but doesn't want to get overwhelmed. You can just pick up 4 tips and a bald cypress tree, and in a couple of years you can have a very, very impressive bald cypress, and all the while you will have experienced the joy of bonsai. I have been experiencing the full-blown joy of bonsai trees in the 5 years that I've had these guys. I'm sure the feeling would be superior to look up and see 3 finished, attractive grouping in a beautiful bonsai pot that's maybe this deep. I'm sure to look up and see that would be pleasing, but along the way it's only going to get better in small increments. I'm never really going to go, how, what I have is is this here and now, and it's been a really, really nice process. I really enjoyed blowing. My bald cypress, my Taxodium digum. The center one. Now, you will see trees that people will go, this is 100 years old. This is, and you have to take all of that with a grain of salt. But at the same time, there's no point in getting weird about it. The tree behind me that is probably in view, this is probably age-wise 3 digits. It's not the biggest 100-year-old tree in the world, but where it grows, it has a 4-month growing season. And when you look at the little segments of yearly growth, there's a bunch of them in, 40 or 50 in a space that's this big, and you go, well, that's not a lot of growth in 4 months every year of its life. So that's its pace and what it looks like in its environment after probably less than 120 years, more or less. There's not a tree here over 25 years old. I did the chop on this tree. This V cut right here, I did that. And when I did that, I was able to count the rings. 5 years ago, 16 rings. 14, 16, I forget. We're right around 20 years. At around 20 years, apparently, I would say these guys make cypress balls, because last year this tree started making cypress balls, and this year it made them all over the tree. That's kind of cool. I'll take a picture of some really pretty foliage with an effervescent green cypress ball on it, and that'll probably be our fun. But yeah, really easy to grow. They don't like freezing, a lot, but they can stand that. I've seen these guys standing in water that was frozen before in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. I have also heard that there's a state park in Michigan that has a grove of Taxodium ditchum in a pond there. So I've heard that they grow. It's far north. It's that. I think Nigel, if I'm not mistaken, has some bald cypress, but greenhouse. His guys would have been in the greenhouse for probably a while now. While at the same time, a lot of growers of these bonsai trees who are in the United States, who are in places where they live, will greenhouse their trees, because you got to remember, we have our trees in a confined environment, and if they get really cold, they're not really crazy about that. And if you can bring them in out of the cold, out of 30s, if you can do that, probably best to do that. Yeah, more heat tolerant than cold tolerant. If, like I said, there's a state park that has them in Michigan. You bet your ass nobody's digging those trees up in the winter, and they probably see quite a bit of time. It's quite a bit colder than the 30s, so they can. But in a bonsai pot, I wouldn't recommend it. And other than that, this is one of the oldest species of trees on the planet. Some of our fossil records and coal deposits indicate that before there were insects that would eat fallen trees, these trees would just live until they fell over, and their world would have been littered with them and the giant sequoias and stuff. Their world would have been littered with their fallen comrades, with nothing around to break them down. And those piled up trees went on to become our coal deposits, which is why coal deposits couldn't happen today. Bugs and bios and things break down dead plant matter about the time it hits the ground and it becomes, gets composted. Before that, they didn't. These guys predate insects, in other words. And we find their leaf imprints on coal deposits that are hundreds of billions of years old. These guys being some of our earliest living things. And a few other species. But bald cypress, dawn redwood, a few others were definitely some of the first things that started creating our atmosphere back in the day. And they predate most of the things that we know of as our biosphere now. So they're pretty fascinating. They're beautiful. They're lacy. Their foliage is very light, and it's not as heavy as, say, a coastal redwood, which has a similar looking foliage. It's slightly bigger, but it's not. It's an evergreen. So these little guys are almost like paper, in that come fall, when it's time to go, they go pretty quick. And other forms of redwoods and stuff that are evergreens, their foliage is a little thicker. It's just a little thicker, a little meatier, and but that makes these guys light and lacy, and they're just beautiful, and they have really great silhouettes. So they are fast growers. That's kind of what I was getting to. 100-year-old ponderosa behind me. 21-year-old bald cypress. So this grew fairly quickly. This is how fast these grows. And this, as far as look at the bark, look at the texture, look at the root base and stuff, this looks like it's been going on for quite some time. This looks like it's been probably a really cool tree for a really long time. And not so, it's just a teenager. So you can get really impressive trees. And I can't say enough. As a pre-bonsai, I have thoroughly enjoyed these trees as much as I think I would enjoy them as finished bonsai. From here to finished trees, it's just such increment little steps. It's like watching your kids grow up or something. You turn around and look and you go, wow, we're beautiful. But then y'all always were. So that's what I would say. That's what I would say about my experience with my taxodium, ditchum. Other trees or a hoarder challenge, and I embrace that. These guys are a little easier. Don't be slack. You need to know how to feed them. You need to know how to inoculate them if you're gonna play the long game. Don't rob the energy out of them. But if you can water them every day, they'll give you time. They'll give you time to figure it out and learn what style you want, what shape you want, and you will find that almost any style you decide, that with the amount of branches that they put out every year, that's pretty accommodating to almost anything you might decide you want to do. There is a site in England that's very, very popular, and their gardener or their bonsai master, I think, if I understand, they inherited the tree possibly from their father, and it was a bald cypress, and it had a buttressed base that we would go to expect on a bald cypress, but they weren't in an environment where they saw cypress trees growing in the wild. And so they just kind of treated it like it was a maple. They took that buttress and went, whoa. It was beautiful. It just kind of came up in that buttress and then did one of these, like my maple is a slant, except that as it does that, it went out into that buttress. It was just absolutely elegant. And that foliage just played right along with it. Believability? No, because I know what bald cypresses look like, and I never saw one grow in that sort of way. But wow, what an impressive and what a beautiful tree. And everything doesn't have to follow some cookie cutter pattern. That tree was absolutely as sustainable in its design as anything I have going here. So you can go outside the box if you want to with these trees. They will lend themselves to other styles. What you tend to see a lot of people do with these guys is formal upright and or flat tops. Some good examples of both. John Jean Angel is a person in the Carolinas who does classes, does lessons, and is absolutely I'd say on top of his game when it comes to taxonium ditchum. You can, I believe in years past, or probably still, take one of his classes and leave home with a fantastic looking tree. So that's all. And then there are other Weigerts in Florida. If you go to YouTube and you type that in and look at their garden, they have beautiful, beautiful taxonium ditchum bald cypress, very, very, very big bald cypress that comes up into a formal upright. They also have some that were maybe this big around with chops like this, and they hollow them out and are working with that, sometimes more than 1 liter or 2. Interesting look, but their garden has quite a few beautiful bald cypresses in several different styles, both flat top and more of a formal upright, and others, right? As well as they have trees that are this big and smaller and bigger for sale. So no need to go shooting up alligators and water moccasins just to go wading up to your arse in mud and plucking things. Although if it's your land, you could say I collected that. That's kind of cool too. I'm calling to people to be respectful in their collection of trees, but they will certainly lend themselves to that. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will be tomorrow when we go out on this day, probably quite a bit like this one, and it'll be more of a free for all compared to our focus on our focus on our bald cypress trees. And I appreciate you. Frida appreciates you. She's telling me to wrap this up. So thank you all so much for watching. Look at that.